Today could be a big day for the San Francisco Giants. We had a report yesterday that Alex Wood was taking his physical yesterday with the Giants. We had a report yesterday that Alex Cobb and the Giants were finalizing a deal. And so, are those two deals going to be announced today? Finally, we have been wondering about those two deals for a long time. And also, it's the tender or non tender deadline today. So, we'll talk about everything going on with the Giants, including missing out or just letting players walk away like Kevin Gausman, something we didn't get into as much as I would have liked to yesterday. So we'll talk about all of that next on today's Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants Baseball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms now, including YouTube. And coming up on today's show, as I said, there's a lot to get to, and some of the things we want to talk about today are topics we didn't go into in as much detail as I would have liked to yesterday. But the first place to start is to talk about these rumors with Alex Wood and Alex Cobb. They are two pitchers we have been talking about for a while as they relate to the San Francisco Giants, because it has seemed for some time that these deals were going to get done. Well, yesterday we had Alex Pavlovich on Twitter saying that Alex Wood was taking his physical yesterday. And then also late yesterday, we had a tweet from Jon Heyman that the Giants and Alex Cobb were finalizing a deal. And so we've been talking about this a lot, but I would now expect those two deals to come to fruition. And the expected contracts, we did have a report when the Alex Wood, I don't want to call it a rumor, but we had a report that they were finalizing a deal with him about a week ago. And the educated estimate was for 2 years and about $10 million per year. And then we had Buster Olney, an ESPN reporter, saying yesterday that one industry educated guess on where the Giants' deal with Alex Cobb will land is 2 years in the $18 to $22 million range with an option. So it looks like both of these pitchers will be brought in to the San Francisco Giants on multi-year deals. We do not know the exact terms, but we have multiple reporters suggesting that each of these deals is for multiple years. And so to me, that's a very good thing for the Giants because it gives them some much needed stability. But let's be real, both pitchers come with significant injury risk. Both pitchers have been hurt a lot over the course of their careers. And Alex Cobb, both of them, Alex Wood, Alex Cobb, both have significant injury risk. But what I like about both pitchers is when they're on the field, they're really quality pitchers, and both have been significantly better than average in their major league careers. Alex Cobb quietly had a very impressive 2021 season. A number of statistics kind of jump off the page from his 2021 season, even though he did continue to struggle with injuries in that year. He had blister issues and also wrist inflammation. So not the most serious of injuries, but you're not going to be able to rely on these two to just be anchors in your rotation. The Giants, Farhan Zaidi specifically, has said that they don't really view this as signing starters to fill out a five-man rotation. They view it as signing starters to fill out 162 games started. And I thought that was an eye-opening kind of insight into the way they think about it. And it's a good way to think about it, right? Because if you're, five-man rotations are not really in vogue anymore. I mean, yeah, you may have a five-man rotation, but you have to understand that through the course of the year, you're going to end up using a lot more than five guys. That's just the reality of 2021 baseball. And so I get questions all the time like, is DeSclafani a number 2 now and Alex Wood a number 3? Alex Cobb, is he a number 3 or is he a number 5? It doesn't really matter. He's one of many starters that they're probably going to end up using in 2022. And yeah, I understand the question, and the question is valid, and I agree basically with the idea that losing Kevin Gausman to the Blue Jays and Logan Webb, yes, front of the rotation guy, but then if behind him your next best starter is Anthony DeSclafani, you've gotten significantly worse because Kevin Gausman was pitching like an ace for the Giants over the last couple of seasons. Yes, the second half in 2021 was not nearly as good as the first or the 2020 performance, but that's a quality pitcher that you're losing, and you would get worse if that was what your rotation looked like going into 2022. The thing is, though, it is November, and yes, there's probably going to be a lockout starting tomorrow night, but at the same time, there is a lot of offseason left. There are a lot of free agents left. There's a trade market, and there's just going to be so many opportunities to continue to improve this team. So I just think patience is a virtue here, and we can judge the Giants offseason on opening day, because we have no idea what's yet to transpire this offseason, and so it's pointless kind of jumping to conclusions. I get it, like a lot of quality players have been signed already, but also let's reserve judgment until the offseason is over. You can't judge the offseason until the offseason is over. That's a pretty obvious, simple way of putting it, I would say. So anyway, coming up next, I do want to talk more about all of this, talk about the impact of losing Kevin Gausman specifically, and if the Giants should have been involved at that price that he ended up getting, and also Max Scherzer and all these top starters who the Giants have not signed. And we'll also get to the upcoming tender deadline, which is tonight, and they already made a move in this regard. So we'll get to all of that next. But first, BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues to march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. All right, here we go. We're going to talk about the tender deadline, which is tonight. It was moved up from like December 1st or 2nd, which was totally going to conflict with the expiration of the CBA. So the league voted to move it up to tonight at 5 o'clock Pacific time, and the Giants have some decisions to make. They're not particularly difficult decisions to make, but we're probably going to see a lot of activity with the Giants because they have a tendency to settle on 2022 or the upcoming year's contracts and avoid arbitration when this tender deadline comes up. And we've already seen one such move today with the Giants agreeing to a deal with John Brebbia. And that deal comes in for $837,500. And the predicted arbitration salary for Brebbia was for $1 million per MLB Trade Rumors, which is kind of the authority on predicting arbitration salaries. So not only do the Giants have a track record, a tendency to agree to deals, thus avoiding arbitration on the tender deadline. I know a lot of this is kind of confusing. I'll break it down in a more simple way in a second. But they also have a tendency to agree to deals that are less than the predicted amount by MLB Trade Rumors. Again, the authority on predicting these amounts. So the other players, so Brebbia is signed now for 2022, and the Giants have 6 other arbitration eligible players. But for Brebbia, I want to point out he has a minor league option and he has a track record of being good. I understand he was not good at all with the Giants in 2021, but for $837,000, it's a virtually zero risk investment in a guy who has a strong track record of past success. And let's not forget, he was coming off Tommy John surgery in 2021. And so the fact that he has a minor league option, they can just continue. They can send him to the minor leagues and just have him continue to rehab, make appearances. And the potential is that he comes back and is able to make an impact and be anything like the player he was with the Cardinals. So it's a good deal for the Giants. There's no reason to complain about this. He doesn't even have to be on the major league roster. So zero problem with this move at all. And he has another year of team control in 2023. But the Giants have 6 other arbitration eligible players in Curt Casali, Dominic Leone, Darren Ruff, Harleen Garcia, Austin Slater, and Mike Yastrzemski. We talked yesterday about how Mike Yastrzemski achieved Super 2 status, which means he was in the top 22% of players who have between 2 and 3 years of service. And because he's designated as a Super 2, it means he became arbitration eligible a year early. So this was good news for Mike Yastrzemski. He's basically going to make a lot more money this year and potentially moving forward than he otherwise would have. The projection now for Yastrzemski is about $3 million, whereas when you're pre-arbitration eligible, the team can retain you for the league minimum salary. So good news for Yastrzemski, and we'll find out tonight. Here's the thing. You don't have to agree to a contract with these players by tonight. The deadline tonight is about whether or not to tender the player a contract. And these salary estimates that I keep citing by MLB Trade Rumors are estimates for ultimately what they will make. And if this process goes all the way down the road, it could go to an arbitration hearing. Basically, if the team and the player can't agree to a number by a certain date, you go to an arbitration hearing. The team argues why the number they submitted, which there's a deadline for submitting a figure for the team and the player. And if you can't agree, again, you go to an arbitration hearing and fight for why you think your number is the right number. And the panel decides and just chooses one of the two. There's no middle ground at that point. And so the Giants rarely go through with this process. Under the old front office, they never went to arbitration, at least not for a very long time. I think AJ Pierzynski went to arbitration and then nobody since. They got close with, I think it was Tim Lincecum, but they agreed to a extension right before a hearing, like literally in the lobby waiting area right before a hearing. They agreed to an extension. But last year, the Giants went to arbitration with Donovan Solano. It went all the way down to the end of the road, and Solano lost that arbitration hearing. So it is a different philosophy by this new front office. They have a file and trial philosophy, which is basically that by the deadline for submitting figures, then they're no longer going to negotiate. Once that date comes where the team has to submit a figure and the player has to submit a figure, if those figures get filed, then no negotiation, they're going to go to a hearing. So it's a different philosophy. A lot of teams have that philosophy. I don't know how much I agree with it. It does give the team some leverage because the player knows if we don't settle, we are going to a hearing and there's a risk for losing out on more money. But at the same time, arbitration hearings are notoriously ugly affairs where the team is basically going in and trying to argue why you're not worth more money. So anyway, that all happens later, and that's all going to be among the frozen activity when a lockout happens. That wouldn't keep going on, like that would be paused along with everything else. But eventually that could happen. But what I'm trying to say, like the punchline here, is that the Giants under this front office, and I think the old one, have a tendency to just settle on a figure today ahead of this tender deadline instead of going through with that whole process that drags on into February usually. So they already reached a agreement with Brebbia avoiding arbitration, and Casale, Leon, Ruff, Jarlin Garcia, Austin Slater, and Yastrzemski are the other arbitration eligible players. None of these players to me looks like a possibility to be non-tendered. So I would expect that the Giants, at the very least, just tender a contract, which means we agree to go through with this process to all of these players, and we're probably going to see a number of agreements avoiding arbitration with these players. So tomorrow we'll be back and we'll be able to talk about a lot of these figures, and also I suspect we'll be talking about the Giants finalizing a deal or two for Alex Wood and or Alex Cobb, and who knows, maybe somebody else in addition or somebody else instead. We just really have no idea. The Giants are they keep everything pretty quiet. We don't hear a lot of rumors going on with the Giants, but I think I said this yesterday. That to me doesn't mean they're not active. It just means they're more guarded with their internal discussions. We just don't hear a lot of rumors about the Giants, but of course they're very active and involved. So coming up next, I want to just take a look at the market, talk about the loss of Kevin Gausman, the money he got should the Giants have gone there for him, and all of that. Basically take a step back and look at the market and look at the Giants' financial situation. All right, as promised, we're going to talk about where the Giants stand and kind of losing Kevin Gausman, not signing Max Scherzer, not signing any of the top starting pitchers or position players. Let's be real. Anthony DeSclafani, yes, not a top starting pitcher. I'm doing air quotes for those of you who are not watching on YouTube, but a solid middle tier starter signed to a multi-year deal, and also Wood and Cobb somewhat on the lower end. I like Wood a lot, but the injury risk. And so, I would put him up there with Anthony DeSclafani. I even talked about how I thought he was a better buy than Anthony DeSclafani. So we'll see what those contracts are. But Max Scherzer signed, Robbie Ray, Kevin Gausman, Eduardo Rodriguez, John Gray, Justin Verlander, Noah Syndergaard. They've all signed, and none of them with the San Francisco Giants. And there's some percentage of fans who are not happy about this. And also, if we look at the position player side, Javier Baez signed. Corey Seager, 10 years, $325 million yesterday to the Rangers, signed. Marcus Semien, Avisail Garcia, Starling Marte, Mark Canha. So the Giants have not been super active in free agency yet. Again, it's November 30th. Yes, I know a lot of activity has happened, but still most players who were considered among the top free agents are still unsigned. So there's plenty of good players left, especially on the position player side, but most of the top starters have signed. The best remaining starters are in no particular order by me, Marcus Stroman, Carlos Rodon, Clayton Kershaw, and that's pretty much it for the top tier starters. And I don't know how realistic any of those guys are for the Giants. I mean, Marcus Stroman, I know there's a lot of people who are very interested in Marcus Stroman. Yeah, he's a ground ball machine, and they clearly value ground ball guys. Alex Cobb, Alex Wood, Logan Webb are all upper tier ground ball guys, and Marcus Stroman is even higher than Cobb and Wood. That's his game, and so there's definitely a possibility of a fit there. Clayton Kershaw, there's just no way I see Clayton Kershaw coming to the Giants. Carlos Rodon, interesting candidate and really upper tier upside, but injury concern. And I don't know how many guys the Giants want to fill out their rotation with who have serious injury concerns. Yes, I think Wood and Cobb are healthy now. But anyway, the point is, what's going on? Why did they not sign Max Scherzer, Robbie Ray, Kevin Gausman? Well, I don't necessarily know. And for Kevin Gausman just to go with a guy who clearly wanted to come back, he ends up getting $110 million over 5 years. And there's a split response to this that I see. There's a lot of people who seem to believe that 5 years for Kevin Gausman at $110 million is just too much risk. And I don't necessarily find myself in that camp. I think it's a pretty fair deal for Kevin Gausman, but I just understand a general aversion to long-term deals like this for starting pitchers. 5 years is a long time. Johnny Cueto was signed for 6 years, and so it felt like Johnny Cueto's been here for a lifetime. And think about that deal. I mean, it was good in year one, and then it was all downhill from there. The Giants have a long track record. Not that Farhan Zaidi was here at the time, but he undoubtedly has the data on long-term contracts for starters. I haven't done that work myself to just look at how these end up, but it doesn't take, a data scientist or it doesn't take much to just kind of go into the memory bank and think about long-term deals for starting pitchers that just generally haven't worked out. And so you might be saying, well, what about Max Scherzer? He got 3 years and $130 million, $43.33 million per season, a record shattering the old record of average annual value that was $36 million, up to 43, 20% more average annual value than the previous record for a 37-year-old pitcher. So look, I get it. Like, in some respects, just throw money at him and you've got Max Scherzer and the Giants can afford it. But in other respects, that's just not really how this front office operates. And I just have a ton of confidence in them. And I think it's a little bit insane not to have confidence in this front office or to think that we know better than this front office that just took a roster that people expected to win 75 games-ish to the best season in franchise history with a team of just kind of mixing and matching and just older players that most people thought were at the tail ends of their careers. So, yeah, on the one hand, the offseason is not over. On the other hand, this front office has earned our trust. And for those of us who still don't trust them, I don't really know what to tell you. Like, what do you think happened in 2021? Do you really think it was just all smoke and mirrors and luck? Because that's not the way I saw it at all. But is their rotation worse today than it was in 2021? Yes. And on the offensive side, they haven't made any changes to this point. But again, they have a lot of money available to spend if they so choose. I would expect that they will end up spending quite a bit more money at the end of the day when all is said and done. Their payroll, even with the expected additions of Wood and Cobb, would still be only at about $120 million, which is about $40 million less than 2021 and about $80 million less than their high of over $200 million in the recent past. As recently as I think 2018, they were over $200 million. So they'd have $80 million to go there. So yeah, that's just kind of how I see it. I trust them and I reserve judgment on an offseason until the offseason's over. And also, it's like a never-ending circle because even once the offseason's over, you've got the season where you can continue to make trades, make acquisitions. I mean, the Giants added Chris Bryant this season. They added Kevin Pillar, Mike Yastrzemski, Alex Dickerson in the middle of the 2019 season. Yastrzemski was acquired in spring training, but he didn't debut until the season. They acquired Lamont Wade Jr. late in the offseason last year, and who knew that he would make the impact he made? And similar story with Yastrzemski. So they've absolutely earned my trust, and I'm just not going to freak out. So that's just kind of how I see it. It's sad to see Kevin Gausman go. I keep wanting to make this point. I think it's a fair deal. I'm a little bit surprised that Giants didn't at least match that offer. I'm assuming they didn't. Maybe they did, but I doubt it. I think he would have come back if the Giants were matching it. But also 5 years, just a long time for starting pitcher. And the deal for Scherzer, just a ridiculous average annual value. So I don't know. I'm just not panicking at all. And I don't see the reason to do that at this point. So anyway, coming up tomorrow, we'll have analysis of any and all moves that get made today. We're going to see a lot of activity with this tender deadline, and we'll talk about some of the players around the league who get non-tendered who could be of interest to the Giants. So come back for that, please. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. You can follow me on Twitter at Ben Kaspick. That's Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. Also hitting that like button on YouTube, that subscribe button as well, and leave a comment below and join in the conversation. Anyway, I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.